This is one of the strangest and best documented stories in all of history. In the summer of 1518, in the city of Strasbourg, hundreds of people began dancing in the streets and could not stop. They danced for days, for weeks, and some of them danced literally until they dropped dead. And the most unsettling part is that, 5 centuries later, no one knows for certain why. To understand what happened, you have to picture Strasbourg in 1518. It was a city on the edge of collapse. Several harvests had failed in the cold, the price of bread had gone through the roof, and many people were starving to death. On top of the famine came disease. Smallpox, syphilis, leprosy, and outbreaks of plague ravaged the region. Death was everywhere, and people lived in a state of constant, exhausting fear. And then, one day in July of 1518, something no one expected happened. A woman named Frau Trophia stepped into the narrow street in front of her house and, with no music and no apparent reason, began to dance. But it wasn't a joyful dance. Witnesses said her face showed no pleasure at all, only anguish. She danced for hours, then for days. When exhaustion overcame her and she fell to the ground, she would rest for a moment and rise again to keep dancing. Her husband, her neighbors, everyone begged her to stop. She couldn't. According to the records, by the 6th day she was still moving without rest, her feet bloodied and her body drenched in sweat. And this is where the story turns truly terrifying. Within days, other people began doing the same thing. First, it was a few neighbors. By the end of that first week, around 34 people were dancing alongside her. But it didn't stop there. The strange compulsion spread through the city like wildfire. In less than a month, the chronicles describe nearly 400 people dancing in the streets, squares, and markets of Strasbourg, unable to stop. The accounts from the time are chilling. Many of the dancers screamed for help, begging someone to stop them. They seemed trapped inside their own bodies, unable to control their movements. And they began to die. Their bodies, pushed to the limit, couldn't take it. According to some chronicles, at the height of the outbreak, as many as 15 people were dying every day from heart attacks, strokes, and pure physical exhaustion. The city authorities were desperate, and they called in the physicians. Their diagnosis, based on the medicine of the time, was that the people were suffering from an excess of hot blood in the body. They didn't see it as something demonic, but as a fever that had to be burned off. And from that diagnosis came one of the worst medical decisions in history. If the problem was hot blood, they reasoned, then the solution was to let people keep dancing until they were completely worn out. You had to dance to cure the dancing. So the authorities did something incredible. Instead of stopping it, they encouraged it. They cleared out markets and guild halls, ordered a wooden stage built, and even hired professional musicians and dancers to accompany the sick. The result was a catastrophe. The music and the stages, instead of calming people down, drew even more of them into the frenzy. The dancing spread faster still, and the deaths multiplied. When they finally understood that their cure was killing people, the authorities reversed course. They banned music, banned public dancing and gatherings, and tore down the very stages they had built. Then they turned to faith. In that region, there was an old belief that Saint Vitus, a Christian martyr, had the power to send a dancing plague upon those who angered him, but also to cure it if he was properly honored. So they gathered many of the sick and carried them by cart to a shrine dedicated to Saint Vitus in the mountains near the town of Savre. There, priests prayed over them and performed rituals to free them from the curse. And little by little, just as it had begun, the dancing faded away. By September of 1518, barely 2 months after Frau Trophia took that first step, the epidemic was over. The streets fell silent once more. And here's a detail many people don't know. Strasbourg was not an isolated case. There were similar outbreaks of uncontrollable dancing across Europe for centuries. One of the largest happened in the year 1374, when thousands of people danced through towns along the River Rhine. So what caused all of this? For centuries, historians and doctors have proposed theories, and not one of them is fully convincing. The first major theory points to a fungus called ergot, which grows on damp rye, the grain used to make bread. When eaten, it causes hallucinations, convulsions, and a burning sensation. In fact, it's a chemical cousin of LSD. The problem is that this fungus also cuts off blood circulation and causes gangrene in the hands and feet. Someone poisoned like that could barely walk, let alone dance in a coordinated way for days on end. The fungus theory just doesn't quite fit. The explanation that convinces most experts today is a different one, a collective psychological illness. The historian John Waller studied it in depth and believes it was an extreme case of mass hysteria triggered by the brutal stress of that era. Think about it. A starving population, terrified of disease and death, surrounded by suffering, and on top of it all convinced that a furious saint could punish them by forcing them to dance. Their minds were at the absolute breaking point. In that state, according to Waller, sheer desperation could push a person into a kind of trance. And in a community that firmly believed in the curse, watching someone fall into that trance was enough to pull others in, one after another, like a chain reaction. And this isn't just a thing of the past. Modern episodes of mass hysteria have been documented. Epidemics of uncontrollable laughter, mass fainting in schools and factories, symptoms that spread with no physical cause at all. The human mind is more powerful and more fragile than we think. The truth is most likely a mixture of everything. Bodies weakened by hunger, minds broken by fear, and a shared belief that turned it into something collective. But we will never have absolute certainty. Because what we do know, beyond any doubt, is that this really happened. It's not a legend or a myth. It's recorded in the city's books, in the physician's notes, and in the chronicles written by those who saw it with their own eyes. They were real people, with names, families, and fears just like ours, who died because of something they could not see, could not understand, and that absolutely no one could stop. 5 centuries later, the dancing plague of 1518 remains one of the strangest medical mysteries in history, an unsettling reminder of everything we still don't understand about our own minds. If this story left you thinking, subscribe to the channel for more real stories that seem impossible. Thanks for watching to the end.